Recording. Hi there. My name is David Batsoffen and I host a travel blog called Travel and Things. And at the moment I'm doing a series called In Conversation With. And today, I don't want to do the song, Let Us Go Across the Sea to Ireland, but the interdict is over and I'm allowed to sing in public places now. And waiting for me in Ireland is the wonderful, the lovely, the inimitable Tove Kane. Tove, how are you?
David, if you're going to tease the people, you might have to deliver at some point. I'd love, especially since the interdict's over. I'm very well. It's lovely to see you, and you're looking great.
So are you, and you're sitting in a wonderful forest, although I somehow have a sneaking suspicion you can turn off that green screen and I'll see a bookshelf or something behind you.
If that forest should fall.
When
Actually, I have a perfectly viable range of different places to do a Zoom chats from, but
right.
I just thought that this would be a nice experience for us today to just enjoy being in the forest and just relaxing.
That's wonderful. When the Last Leg, which is a British TV panel show, when they did their lockdown show, Josh Widdicombe did it in front of a bookcase, and it looked like it was a bookcase. And then he said, "No, it's not. It's green screen. Let me take it away and show you where I am sitting," which was in his loft, which was being renovated.
Classic.
So there's just
actually, I've got a very beautiful place, but I like to vary it up. So yeah, for me, it's nice to have the options. This one's not a green screen though; it's an actual drape.
Picture.
So
oh wow,
yeah, it's a drape. Yeah.
Impressive.
Bells and whistles, David.
Smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors.
for people who haven't seen you for a while and are going, "Oh, where do we remember her from?" Take us back over your career, because I mean, you were in Joburg, and then you hived off to my hometown, and we'll talk about that, and then you buggered off across the seas. So let's go back to your time here in Joburg and your radio work in Joburg.
Well, that was obviously a very special time for me. I absolutely loved, Johannesburg's a very special city for me. I love it, and I always will. I think, this is an example of how, one door closing opens a passage of others, but you don't know it at the time, David. So what happened for me was I'd been 10 years on 94.7. I'd started out on Talk Radio 702 as a sports anchor, and then I moved over to 94.7. And after 10 years, I was nominated for a Crystal Award. I'd had a couple of others for Best Female Personality, but this was an interesting moment because it was for radio personality. And I was nominated with Jeremy Mansfield, Alex J, DJ Fresh, Gareth Cliff. I was the only woman in the category. And it was with all the icons of radio, people I'd know and love and admire and have great relationships with. And I was obviously quite nervous to be in that category. And I won the award. And not long after that, my contract wasn't renewed.
You wonder why. Who did you really tick off?
How much more does a person, So at the time, and I've written about it in my book, Overnata. I wrote it, there was a time when I was sitting with my son. We used to sit and watch Grey's Anatomy, and he used to sort of sit in this enclave in my arm, and I would always be sobbing, how girls do for Grey's Anatomy. Right. And I would be bleating about, whatever was happening on the TV. And I found it quite difficult to tell him that I was leaving 94.7 because obviously as a youngster growing up with a mom on that brand, he was introduced to so many different things. When Barney came, he got to meet Barney. When, Christina Aguilera was there, he had photographs, so all the concerts, all the music, all that stuff. And so eventually I was sitting on the couch and I said to him, and he said, "But Mom, you're not going to be Tove Kane anymore." And David, that was such an interesting moment because It was exactly how I felt, that my persona was greater than my personality.
Yeah.
And it cut me. It absolutely destroyed me. I was heartbroken because I loved that brand. I loved working there. And I, you know, for me, it was gone too soon. I felt like I was, you know, I still had so much to give and do. And it was a popular show, you know, it really was popular. So I was absolutely cut. Literally, almost in a way, kind of waltzed across the dial and joined Jacaranda, which was also just so refreshing and interesting and lovely to be on a different platform, slightly bigger audience, a bigger reach. I wasn't that great at speaking Afrikaans, but I did my very best. I can remember emceeing a function where Karen Zoid was, I was introducing her, and she did this tease of a link about my accent. But it was just so sweet that, you know, she had heard me and that she thought it was a delight that I was trying, you know, because a lot of people who don't speak other languages kind of, you know, just hide in English, but I really gave it a go, to the extent that I ended up singing a duet with Martin Bester called Sit It An, which is hilarious. You'll be able to Google that, actually. Yeah, we shot the video in Monte Cassino, and it was so much fun. It was a dynamic brand, a lot of interest, and we did some fun things like taking listeners on the Love Boat cruises and things on the big symphony, and it was just lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had this wonderful opportunity to fly some listeners to Paris to get to a James Blunt concert, and all just dynamic things. It was opening up. And that's the thing, you know, who would have known when I was so cut up that this whole new platform would open up for me. After that, I decided to move to the Eastern Cape. I suppose as I was progressing, I had also written a book, which, in a way, this was such an interesting example of how sometimes analog doesn't work. But I'd literally written a book, kind of like you would, you know, like a hard copy type book like this, you know. And I'd handwritten it and illustrated it myself. More doodle than illustration, it has to be said, but it was a great, it was a book about rising above that pain and the anguish and discovering that there's much more to life than your career. And the book was called Rise and Be Abundantly You. And it was about, you know, using metaphysical teachings and things that I'd been learning and delving into, and just that it helped me to recover from that pain. And I lost the book when I was on holiday in Cape Town. And it was, I mean, it was the only copy that existed. And I'd had artwork designed for the cover and all of that stuff. And I had this yearning to write and to have, you know, get a message to other people, because to me, I always feel like our learning is so valuable when we can pass it on to somebody else, that they can benefit, so that the lesson is shared. And so I really wanted to offer people that message of recovery when you are not feeling very well.
So somebody in Cape Town, in fact, scored 1-on-1 if they found your book. I'm hoping they held on to it, read it, and benefited from it, rather than just tossing it on a fire or in a landfill, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. I often think, I wonder whoever has it, and I hope it helped them.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting was, I used to have this phrase, be kind to yourself and those around you. And it was just my heartfelt phrase. I didn't realize that was actually my personal mantra. You know, that was just how I would finish MC work or gigs or something. And it was so strange to see it repeated back to me. I was invited to play myself on Egoli. It was one of their last episodes that they were filming. And it was so funny to see them, you know, on the set and be on the location. And it was lovely with each member of the cast come in and said, "Oh, we heard your last show. It was really emotional." And, you know, it was so strange to have that connection from other people that I didn't know even that last show had impacted them.
Yeah.
And so that mantra started to sort of niggle a little bit, and I thought, what else I could do with this? I'd also done some work, and I saw you had the gorgeous and lovely Michael Jackson on one of your podcasts not too long ago. And he had said to me, you know, Tove, there is life after radio, you know.
And Tove seems to have stuck for a moment, but we'll work through this. It's what live television is all about. Tove, you're
Yes.
back with us. Yes,
Oh
there you
yeah, I'm
are.
so
You've
glad.
moved again. Yay.
There are 10,000 kilometers between us, but isn't
Exactly.
technology lovely?
It is indeed.
Okay.
I've learned not to get stressed about it and just talk through it. That's how our live radio training helps us. We don't stress.
Absolutely. Nothing phases us.
No, we can fill hours of holes.
Exactly. So I worked with Michael for a bit, specifically communicating social media, the impact and the profound necessity to include social media in business, and that was wonderful. And it was great to work with him. And I did some work with his wife, who is at with Tiger Brands, and I was doing some presentation skills training. So I use mindfulness-based presentation skills, because it's not enough to get people to, handle themselves on stage or to handle their slides, or, from a technical perspective. If they have an internal monologue running that says, I'm not good enough, or I hope I don't mess this up, or I'm an imposter, how dare I, all of those things. So I did quite an extensive range of training for Tiger Brands and other companies after that, helping CEOs and senior management to develop their personal self-confidence in order to present confidently. And of course, with a background in drama and English and,
It helps,
broadcasting,
Tad.
it made so much sense, because I was showing them how to handle themselves. For TV, you got to keep a very still head. You can't be too flaily with your arms and such. And for radio, just voice work and breathing and such. And I had this fascination always for mindfulness and meditation. And so I did a lot of research, and ultimately we'll get to that. But before that, I took a trip down to Port Elizabeth, and I absolutely fell in love. I was at university at Rhodes, so I knew Port
Just up
Elizabeth
the
well.
road.
And it was
It's my
just like home.
hometown. I'm biased.
Yeah, exactly. And what a lovely place. And my mum lived in Port Elizabeth. My cousin lived there. And it was just so wonderful to spend time with them. And I met up with a woman through the Business Women's Association. And she owned a scuba diving school. And it was on my bucket list. I want to learn to scuba dive and such. And I loved it so much that I actually made a documentary for them, an underwater movie that I shot across all 4 seasons. So diving in the winter, diving in the summer, and it was great. It was a really fantastic movie. It was lovely to learn peak performance buoyancy, so that I could film underwater, very cold conditions, but very, very dynamic as well. And
So
with
why
that,
didn't you just move it all to Durban and film it there? I mean,
we have different water.
No, it is different water, but at least it's warm. I mean, I only learned to scuba dive when I came to Johannesburg. I lived in Port Elizabeth my entire childhood. I worked a year at the Oceanarium, cleaning windows from the inside. But I never dived for recreational purposes. That only happened when I came to Johannesburg. It was weird, and there's no sea here. You've got to go to Bass Lake or down to Miracle Waters or something like that to get any dive time. Don't dive on the bus. Exactly. Everybody knows that miserable. We did our night dive on that bus, and that is scary.
That is brave stuff, David. That is brave stuff.
It was part of my advanced diving course. And so we had to do that. And then we went back the next day and we swam that bus in the daylight. And it's totally different. It's like not being in the same place at all. At nighttime is really scary when you've only got a teeny tiny torch.
Exactly, you've got to be brave. I hope that you can get back to the bay to dive, because those reefs are absolutely spectacular. In fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Sylvia Earl. She's the equivalent of, say, Jacques Cousteau. She's a very famous oceanographer. She's an octogenarian who still dives. And I can remember sitting, bobbing on a dinghy with my camera in my scuba gear, interviewing Dr. Earl just before she dove to take to make it a hope spot, that the bay is now a hope spot. And it was such a privilege to meet her, to talk to her, to dive with her. And you know, that also showed me there's much more to life than just, you know, broadcasting, and the planet matters.
Yeah.
And human hearts matter. And that leads me on to my next experience, because
Which was your heart.
yeah, that was another story.
What was that like?
Obviously,
What was that like for you, Tove? And the reason that I bring it up is we sort of have something similar in common, although I didn't end up with a dual pacemaker, but I had to get my heart shocked back into rhythm. And I was feeling as right as rain. I didn't have any symptoms. And all of a sudden, I'm flat on my back in ICU, and they tell me, your heart is out of whack, and now we're going to have to knock you out and electrify you to get you back into rhythm. It was scary.
that is frightening, David,
I mean,
because that's where you
trying to think. I had, I don't know if you can see, there's the
yes,
normal rhythm as a
yes,
tattoo.
yeah. Lovely. It's where you meet your mortality in a way.
Hey,
And I
tell me
suppose,
about it.
I'm sure it gave you significance, because it's like you are opened up into your second opportunity, second chance, and you want to live it with significance.
Yeah.
Well, for me, because I'm not a small busted woman, I used to not enjoy wearing my my heart rate monitor, the strap, on my chest. So I used to go, perceived heart rate. And so I was training for Ironman. And, you know, that's pretty heavy stuff. It's, you know, my washing line, I can remember, was a festival of Lycra.
Been there, done that. Got the medal.
Cycling, running, all that stuff. So, you know, but as I say, so I would have these strange heart palpitations. I would be getting really fast heart rate and then a really slow heart rate, but it was just not great. And I can remember one day training with a friend of mine. First of all, when I had gone to do the half Ironman at Buffalo, was training, I was crazy. I was trying to do the half and the full in the same year. And I just wasn't ready for it, really, honestly. And, you know, those hills in East London are really tough. It's a tough, tough climb.
It is indeed.
And yeah, and you know, when you go out later, you're out there in the wind and the rain, and so I didn't do my race management wasn't great, and I kind of just technically nunked it, really. I missed the cutoff by about 5-10 minutes from the cycle to the run, but actually, again, just like the radio career, that missed cutoff probably saved my life, because after that, I was so disappointed in myself that I'd missed the cutoff. Because, you know, you train so hard for it. And obviously, I mean, I was in the colors of the radio. I was in the colors of the radio station that I was working for. And I felt so ashamed because I'd let everybody down, I felt. And so I thought, well, then the only solution is I have to really up my training and make sure that I hit it hard for the full. And so I was out there, you know, training as hard as I could with my training partner. And actually, I was only doing Ironman as a support to her. I didn't actually ever intend to do it. I just kind of joined in. And so she had always said to me, pace yourself, Tove, because I'm a bit of an animal. I go a bit wild, I get a bit hard about things. And then you know, you've got to really get used to the pacing. Anyway, we'd been out for a run in the morning, and we had a swim to do later. And we got to the swimming pool, and this was another lesson for me in judgment, because I remember, I mean, I was this lithe, lean, muscular, healthy athlete, and we got to the pool, and the somewhat rotund types were doing aerobics on the side of the pool, and they had occupied 2 or 3 lanes, and my judgment was, well, you know, they're making these tsunamis in the water there. And, you know, we want to train. And it ended up being, so, I mean, there was me in judgment of them. I should have been going, ladies, well done that you are exercising. Bless you that you cared enough to take your body into the water. Well done. Now I feel that way. Now I acknowledge that.
If you go to any one of those long distance swims, and when Higher Safari Ranch was still a place here in Johannesburg, it's no longer. under a new name. I bumped into Sam Cowan, who got into long distance swimming. I mean, what is it with you radio ladies and long distance swimming? But anyway, be that as it may, the first time I went to one of those events, there were people of all shapes and sizes. And again, like you, I was like, and then I thought, hang on a second, they're in the water. You're standing
Doing
out
it.
photographs. Don't be judgmental. They're
Exactly.
completing 2, 3, and 5 kilometer swims. You're lucky if you can do 100 meters in a pool.
Correct. And
Just walk away, Renee.
Yeah, well, it's actually, it's inspiring to see them doing it, and those ladies actually saved my life, because it ended up being that my partner and I ended up having to train in the same lane, and my heart stopped in the pool, and I literally just went down in the water, and I kind of came to briefly when my partner had her thumbs under my armpits, and she lifted me up, and my head was like, and she said, Tove, and I was like, I remember just saying, it's happening. I don't know why I said that, but I said, it's happening. And I had absolutely no energy, but effectively my heart had stopped. I pretty much died in the pool.
Wow.
And they brought me up and got me out and such. And the next day, I was due to cycle with the race director of Ironman. And my training partner said to him, so this is what happened. And obviously he spotted straight away there's something up. And he said, you're going straight away to get that heart checked out. And it ended up that I was under various different examinations, but I had to wear a portable ECG monitor for a few times. That's 24 hours a day with them, just doing perpetual ECGs to see what's going on. And it ended up that my heart was in a bad way, and I didn't realize it. I had to detrain from Ironman. I ended up, I'd also developed this terrible widespread body pain, and so I ended up having fibromyalgia and an issue with my heart, and I needed to have a dual chamber pacemaker. So my life literally just
again
180.
The new word, I suppose, the current word is pivoted. It's like we watch, what do they say? We're watching an Australian TV series at the moment, my wife and I, and the word there is polarize. If they put in a picture that the judges don't like, they say the picture will polarize your potential buyers. And they use that word over and over. You want to climb into the TV and slap them stupid. It's the same with pivot. But so what happened now? Firstly, I've heard so much about fibromyalgia, and it seems to be incredibly painful on many levels. So now you've got that, and I'm hoping that it's treatable, and you've got your heart issue. Fibro is not treatable?
Not treatable. Nobody knows there's no cure for it. There are enormous numbers of prescribed drugs that people often have to take for it because the pain is so particularly extreme. It happens in your joints and in your muscles, and it's widespread. The worst is you can be looking really great and you are in extreme pain. And you also have terrible fatigue, you get IBS, you get headaches. You get so depressed because you're in chronic pain. It's perpetual pain.
And do they know what caused it?
It can come at the various different causes for fibro. Sometimes it can be trauma. So it could have been the trauma following the surgery after my heart. Who knows? For me today, I've decided that I would prefer to have meditation over medication.
Okay.
And so that's but I'll tell you, David, there are days where I literally cannot get out of bed because the pain is so extreme, which is hard for me because I'm an active, busy person, and it's not great to have these kinds of pains. And so I also I had issues with the rest of my body. I ended up having to have a hysterectomy, etc. But anyway, I decided, you know what, I'm not getting any younger.
You gloss over that so simply, Tove. No, just rip it out, toss it away. No, you can't do that, because that is a huge operation for a woman.
Yeah, it was
on
huge.
Various levels.
I think for me, so much of, the emotional and mental suffering is tied into physical suffering. And so it's given me such empathy for people with pain, because I definitely went through uh, uh, very prominent bouts of depression. For example, when I first had my pacemaker, it felt like a jungle in my chest. It was taking my heart rate up too much. And obviously, because I meditate, my heart rate naturally drops down. So the pacemaker kept zooting it back up again. So eventually I had to say to them, can we just dial it back a little bit?
Yeah.
And it took me a year to get used to having that piece of technology in my chest. It felt like I could not relate to it. I couldn't relate to the cyborg concept. I
Yeah.
knew it was helping me, but I felt so detached from it. It was physically uncomfortable. It bulged in my chest. I couldn't sleep properly. So I was depressed. It was very hard. Emotionally, I was in a terrible way. I just thought, what has my life come to,
So,
So that was difficult.
so then why was the move from Port Elizabeth to Ireland part of yet another pivot for
Yes.
Tove,
Yeah.
and why Ireland?
Well, my dad comes from here.
Okay.
And my sister and I at different times have come back to visit family, etc. But we'd never lived here, David. And it's not an easy place to be in the Northern Hemisphere if you have been brought up in
Yep.
Africa. And obviously, I mean, when I moved, I hemorrhaged money because the exchange rate was 25-1.
Wow.
And it was just extreme. But I thought, I'm not getting younger. I'm in my second life, and I want to do something more with it. And I felt like that being up north, I could explore more, certainly in Europe and such. And that was wonderful. Yes, I did. I ended up doing a lot of traveling, going to Turkey, going to France, to Spain, and so I developed Tove's Travels, and I did a lot of podcasts around the travels. And that was, what it's like. It's enormous fun to go and, to see these different sites that you've heard of as,
Like
but
the Hagia
you seem
Sophia, which is part of one of my spiritual homes. That building makes
gorgeous.
me cry. It really and
Did
truly
you
does.
go down to see Ephesus at any time?
Yep.
Beautiful to
Yeah.
see that library there, to see. So for me, the being here was just wonderful, to travel around and such. And all the while I was studying mindfulness and meditation, and going to meditation classes and such. And it occurred to me, I joined a commercial radio station here, and I was doing various things. I had joined the Women in Business. I made a documentary for cancer survivors. This was a very interesting documentary because it was showcasing the very raw wounds for cancer survivors after their surgery. So for some people, it was in their brain. Some people it was in their body. So, it was very moving meeting those people and filming that documentary and just documenting their journey.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart, but a couple of those people have passed since I filmed that. And I'm left with the memory of their stories, but also the legacy that we captured what they say for others. Because not a lot of people know just how difficult it is to come back from surgery like that, and to live with, those extreme life and death scenarios. So that was a very moving situation for me. What I didn't realize was my pacemaker was actually not in a good way, or my heart wasn't. And I ended up having to go back into hospital and have it reset. And that again was like even though I'm living this dynamic life and traveling the world and exploring these things, still my heart keeps making itself known. And that was not easy. You know, I was, to get by, I was doing pet photography and did some extras work, and it was very interesting. I love being on set because here is the home of Game of Thrones, and all I wanted to do was get onto the Game of Thrones extras team.
And did
But
you?
no, I'd shaved hair at the time, and they only wanted girls, you know, ginger hair. And
Yeah.
I just didn't have the look, and I was devastated. But all the extras you worked on, it said, Tove, it was so icy cold, you don't want to. But
I
I
should
became...
I should imagine. Just as an aside, 4 years ago, we were in Dubrovnik for my birthday, and
Oh, there you go.
that's where
King's
they
Landing.
filmed King's Landing, season 1 and
Yeah,
season 2. So we got
yeah.
to sit for my birthday on that King's Landing. And my wife
Lovely.
had the most expensive glass of wine she's ever had, 185 rand. She thought it was a bottle. And when she said, could I have the, second glass from the bottle? And they went, no, that 185 bucks is per glass.
That's it. That's it. I'm aware that we don't have too much time, but just to bring you right up to speed, I did some tour guiding work here on the Giant's Causeway route, which was just absolutely magnificent. Lovely to meet foreigners from around the world and to show them all of these beautiful places, because Northern Ireland is spectacular. It's a lovely, lovely place. I qualified as a mindfulness and meditation teacher. I did a diploma in mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy because I wanted to reach back to people. I knew when I was teaching presentation skills that there was a lot of people carrying a lot of ancient wounds that they needed to recover from in order to succeed in business. And that led me on to writing my book, Overnata, which is being...
When does that come out?
It's coming out soon. It's being edited in New York. And it's so exciting because it's a fun concept of talking about the... I've personified the negative inner critics. So I've got these positive and negative clans, and I've given them all these Irish names, and they are just, it's actually quite a romp. It's quite fun. I can see us doing an animated TV series for it.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that led me on to one of the aspects that I'm talking about in the book is about you've got to get as many feel-good strategies going as you can.
Right.
Music, movement, laughter, and that led me on to laughter yoga. And
all right, so I want to hold you there for a second.
Yes.
Because I want to ask a question. You're worse than Robert
Yes.
Williams on Michael Parkinson. Give the boy a break here.
Did you want to ask me a question?
I'd like to. I feel like I have to say, may I ask you a question? Just to rein you back in. Because when I saw, and I've been watching some of your laughter videos, and I know what's happened to you since 2019. You lost Keegan in 2019, and that was a huge blow. And then you lost your mom, and then you lost Riley. And I didn't realize that Riley had gone because I'd seen a posting of yours saying we're sitting outside the vet.
Yeah.
You'd gone there, and there was a long line of cars in front of you, and the next thing I know, Riley's gone as well.
Yeah, it was horrible, David.
I should well imagine so. And it can't. I mean, both family and animals, and they were, I should imagine, when you moved and took them with you, you took them with you for a very specific reason. You could have left them with family, but you needed them with you. And now both of them are no longer there. So was the laughter as a result of, or was it already there and you using the laughter to help you deal with this?
I'm so glad you did ask the question because you asked the good ones, David. Actually, I'm so grateful to laughter yoga because it's laughter yoga that I think, for me, I think I have such a soft heart that I can easily get dragged down into depression. I can get down there into mournful sorrow. And it was, I mean, we flew out immediately to our mom in Australia. She was just visiting my brother. I mean, it was supposed to be Christmas holiday. So we had no idea that she was sick. So, and it's not like the movies. I held her as she passed. And it's
They don't go to
it's
sleep, Tove.
it's gruesome.
Yeah.
It's actually gruesome, and it's not an easy experience. And a part of me still really quite disturbed by it, but also moved that she was there for my birth and I was there for her death.
Yeah, it's
So
wonderful.
something of that sort of
Yeah.
coming home story. But if it weren't, I could feel myself. Keegan was, you know, she's my person. The Dalmatian is my person. She brought me through a lot of heartache because not only was it my career, but I had a beautiful relationship that really mattered to me. We were 16 years together. We've got a son. That was a lot for me to go through as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of my life was defined by loss. And to lose all these things. So laughter yoga has actually, I'd started it prior to Riley being ill. So laughter yoga actually gave me the mechanism to come back because it's a daily practice and you're not looking for conditions. You're not allowing your laughter to be dependent on jokes or comedies or even a sense of humor. You offer it as a practice. So the day that he passed, we took him, we called the vet at 2 a.m. We hadn't been asleep. I won't describe the illness that he had gone through, but at 3 we were at the vet and he passed at 3:45 that morning. And I shot that laughter video later that day, having been weeping the whole day and just being in a devastated state because of him. And we were, we're not just pet lovers. They are, I think, in a way, somewhat deeper even than family, because you are entirely responsible for them. The door
indeed.
opening, food, the water, the love, the companionship, everything about them is provided by you. And they exchange it with this wonderful beingness and this generosity, this unconditional love. And laughter yoga, because I'm in a 40-day practice, I thought, I'm also a laughter yoga leader. I teach it. And it's not authentic for me to say to people, you can use laughter yoga even if you're in a bad way, if I didn't use it at my worst. And so that's why I did it, but it was hard, David.
I should imagine, after my dad died, which was 16 years ago now, and it was very sudden. I literally got a phone call saying he's had a stroke, and then 4 hours later, he's dead. And he was in PE, I was in Joburg. It was 1:00 in the morning. There's nothing you can do until you can get on a flight. But for a year, I did a talk called Using Humor to Get You Through the Tough Times. And
there you go.
I did that. My dad had a wonderful sense of humor. And I remember, and if I may, I'll share it with you, two incidents that got me through this and still do. One was when I went down to PE to fetch his ashes. He'd been cremated, and I went down to bring them back to Joburg for both my sister and myself. And we split them, but that's another story. My sister was very concerned. I said, don't worry, it's only a little bit, Dad won't miss it. So I get to the counter at PE Airport and I say to the woman, look, my dad's never flown business class before. Is there any possibility of you upgrading us to business class? So she looks at me and I said, I can see from your look, you're looking at me, there's one ticket, there's one person. Ask me where my dad is. So she goes, where's your dad? And I go, he's in a box in my backpack. So she looks at me and she goes off and I see her talking to her superior. And she comes back and she says, look, we can upgrade your father, but we can't upgrade you. And I said, if I'm flying coach, so is he. But I thought, nice sense of humor, taken the sting out of it, and they've dealt with it with laughter. And the second one, I'd asked my mom after he died if there was anything he'd wanted to do that he hadn't achieved. And she said, yes, he'd always wanted to join the circus. That was a dream of his. So there was a circus in Johannesburg at the time. And my father, being a man of cleavage, sounds like a title from Game of Thrones, but he was, and those who know him as that. I found an aerial artist who took the little bottle of ashes that I had of my dad, put it in her cleavage, did her entire routine, came down,
Oh,
handed me the bottle back, and signed a certificate that I'd drawn up stating that my father had posthumously taken part in the circus. And to the
I
best of my
love that.
knowledge, my mom still has it up on the door in her bedroom. And
That's
people,
wonderful.
and I'm sure you may find this as well, when I did that talk, there were a couple of people who came to me and said, "You're being disrespectful to your father." And I said, if you knew my dad, you know that I'm not being disrespectful, that I'm actually honoring him in a way that befits the man.
That would delight him.
Yeah, it would have.
Yeah.
It would have. I know that that bottle of ash was shaking.
That's wonderful. What an adventure.
It
And
was
yeah,
indeed. It was indeed.
yeah.
So now you find yourself in a place using laughter therapy. I'm assuming that, can people do this long distance? I mean, with the modern
I can do
technology
it
that
with you
we
now,
have now.
even.
No,
One
I
of the
don't want.
things that
I'm scared. I'm scared to laugh.
you've just done it anyway, so that's good.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so just in wrapping up, Tove, it's been wonderful talking to you. There's so much more I want to touch base with, and perhaps we'll do this again because I want to talk about Tove's travels, because I think you and I have been to some similar places, and it's giving people
Yes.
something to look forward to when this whole terrible world that we find
Oh,
ourselves in at the moment
yeah,
is imploding and not allowing us
yeah,
to go anywhere. So
yeah.
if people do want to find out more about you, what you offer, upcoming courses, that type of thing, how do they do that?
There's various ways. I'm on all social media. You'll be able to find me on Facebook, Tove Kane page. I have a YouTube channel. You can see some of my videos there. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. And I have my own website, tovekane.com. So there are various different ways to be in touch, and yeah, I do personally respond and try to interact as much as I can.
It
And
sounds
David, it's been
wonderful.
an absolute pleasure to chat to you and to see you looking so
It's
well.
been it's been so great.
Yeah,
I've been in conversation with the inimitable Tove Kane. Tove, thank you so much once again for being a guest on In Conversation With.
lovely to see you.